So, gentlemen, we're here at the bar at the Maggot Clubhouse. A great place to be. Good to see you. And we're going to discuss something very important today. How the Maggots played their first game. When, where, how, all the things. So let's just say, when was it? Tell me when it was.
I'll start. Labor Day weekend, 1976. We road tripped from Missoula and Great Falls, as it turned out, to Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, to play in the Whoop Up Tournament, which was an annual event that we enjoyed forever. And the tournament was amazing. We loved it. They fed us on a farm, etc. But the motel room environment was great because we'd go up there for the long weekend, and it was the weekend of the Jerry Lewis Telethon. You remember that?
Yeah.
So we would go up there in a combination. We'd go up there and put 20 of us in a motel room between games on Saturday and games on Sunday, and we'd do the Jerry, staying up late watching all night the Jerry Lewis Marathon.
I remember watching it.
And then just to piss Rex off in the mornings, we'd turn on the televangelists and we'd watch Sunday morning religious programs. Oh God!
So you guys have been up there before for this tournament as University of Montana players.
I don't recall that we did.
Well, I think I was up there, but we used to just show up because we knew that was rugby in the summer.
Ah, okay.
And so a couple of times, one time I convinced Janice we're going to the Big Fork Playhouse, the play in Big Fork.
Oh, right.
And somehow I missed the turnoff, and by then it was too late, and so we wound up in Canada, and there were enough other guys that had come from across. Pigpen was there, the Billings boys were there, and so we put together a team. And so I'd been there 3 or 4 times before.
I'd been to Lethbridge, but I don't remember going to the Whoop Up before.
Oh, okay. So you've been up there to play Lethbridge, but not at this actual
Because we had a
tournament.
long-term relationship with, remember Little Animal?
Yeah,
From up there?
Tom Irving.
Yeah, Tom,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so the first time I was up there, I played for the Rams, and they convinced me to play second row. That was the first time I ever played second row, and it was probably my second or third game ever.
You're built for it.
And we won, and they were so complimentary. They said, and we got these really nice mugs. They gave out as part of the entry. You got this nice glass mug, British type mug, and it was embossed with Hoop Up Rugby Days, 1970, whatever. And they said, we want you to do this skit with us. And I said, sure. So I want to be part of these guys, So they did the 3-man lift. You ever seen that skit where you get the 2 props holding you down, and I was guiding Bill, and I was playing along, and they unzipped my pants, my pants, and I was so pissed off. I was teething mad, stomped off, and then they came and got me, we're sorry, it's part of rugby.
They weren't sorry.
So this is, I'm assuming now that this is pre-bust for you guys to go up. If it's your first match as the Maggots, it had to be before the bus, right?
Yes and no. It's
Okay.
pre-Maggot bus, but not pre-bus. Because we used to take the bus trips as university players on the spring tours.
Okay.
We'd get the Kiwanis Bowling Club, bus, and we'd rent that and take, take off to California and Oregon, Washington and play. But it predates the first Maggot bus.
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay. So who organized this? Like, okay, we're going to Hoop It Up Fest.
Well, I could back it up even from there. I can remember before we were even Maggots.
Okay.
I can remember saying, okay, we're going to graduate. We got to have another opportunity. Is this the time? Do we wait? And it was just time. We were all graduating. Some of us are already out of university a couple years, and we made up our minds, okay, we got to do this. And so, okay, how do you go about doing it? And Paul Smith sat down, mostly, he didn't have much help. He sat down and wrote the original bylaws.
Right.
You remember,
Okay.
you remember that?
Yeah.
Charter that. So that whole thought, organization, and direction took place prior to even our first road trip.
Okay.
So we organized. Paul worked mostly Paul. I'm going to give Paul all the credit. Paul wrote the bylaws. We liked what we saw. Maybe a couple different iterations, but we adopted those, voted as a club, and from then we were the Maggots. Okay, what do we do now? And by then, whatever the date was, okay, now we got to start organizing games, trips, etc. Right?
Yeah.
How much did you?
And this is that first one after that happened.
Yeah.
So Bill said that many graduated, but many of us didn't. I didn't. I started in 1970 and got my degree in 81.
Right.
Because rugby always got in the way. But
Right.
some of the guys actually made it in time.
I went to college for 17 years. I ran out of GI Bill and money, and my wife ran out of patience.
Yeah. I said, you got to do something here. Right? So it was, I'm assuming, a Saturday, Sunday event, so you left on Friday? Is that how this worked? Or
Left on a Friday afternoon as soon as people could get off work. I was working at Sealy Lake, so I had to drive down to Missoula, and because I didn't have a car, so I had to pick up my girlfriend Janice, who's been my very patient wife, and we headed up to meet the boys in Lethbridge.
So yeah, this is our first scheduled fixture as a bona fide Maggot Rugby Club.
Right.
And so we were still kind of scattered. For instance, in my case, I don't know where everybody else was at the time, but I was already in the Air Force active duty and was already in Great Falls trying to organize the Great Falls Gophers. And I actually had organized a small group of us, Logan Saylor, Mike Anderson, and a few others that gotten organized enough that on that same weekend, we took a Great Falls Gophers
You did?
team.
Yeah, that's right.
We
Yeah.
took a Great Falls Gophers team up there.
Okay.
And so I traveled with the Gophers, but was still, I mean, my heart and
Right.
soul and everything else was still with the Maggots. And in those days, I mean, playing 3-4 matches a day was like, yeah, give me more.
Right. It seems that's
So
we all did that.
So I traveled as a
Yeah.
Gopher and played the first Maggot match.
Cool. So now this is the other thing. What teams do you remember were there? You know what I mean? Like teams that still exist or teams that don't exist? Who was at the tournament?
Certainly, the Gophers were there, Maggots were there, Lethbridge. What was there? There were the Leprechauns.
The Miners.
The Miners.
The Miners,
The
'cause there's
Miners.
a coal mine-
And then
coal mines around.
the team that we played in that first match was the Calgary U23. So those are the four teams
okay.
I remember.
And we
being there
played
for
the
sure.
Rams.
The Rams were there
The
too?
first game of the Rams, and we tied the Rams and we beat the U23s.
Well, the first match was against the U23s.
Was it
I
three
thought. Yeah,
U23s?
yeah. The first match ever in my mind, as I recall it, and it's rock solid. There's no question whatsoever. It was the Calgary U23s. The older I get, the more perfect my memory is.
Well, actually, Co, I just read a write-up that I think is pretty accurate. It's in the first program of the Maggot Fest, talking about how the Maggots formed, and it says the first game was the Rams.
Yeah,
and
right.
then we played U23s.
But that was written with a hangover, Skip.
Oh, that's, but it doesn't matter.
Source material is not always correct. As a historian, you gotta remember that.
So I know we played, the first day we played 2 games. We played U23s and we played the Rams. We tied one, beat the U23s because our props destroyed their props. They quit. Dewey, Pigpen, Bitey, and
Lee Dilly might have been there.
Lee Dilly was there, yeah.
I know some of those guys. That seems like a pretty formidable front row.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
And these are big kids, but they hadn't played against the cheating old boys like Pigpen. Plucked one of the kids' armpit hairs out, and he was squealing like a stuck hog.
Our props would stop shaving like 3 or 4 days ahead of time, so they had this scruff.
Oh yeah, way to go. Okay, so now I've heard from you guys and from other people that there's quite a story that goes along with getting to this first Maggots match. Tell me how that went down.
Let me start that one, Skip, because
Okay.
it kind of sets the stage for what I want you to carry on with. I was in Great Falls. I was in the Air Force forming the Great Falls Gophers with our other organizers, and one way or another I ended up with a friend of mine. We were volunteering with a group home, conglomerate of group homes for special needs kids.
Gotcha.
I mean, they were anywhere between, probably 18 and 28 or something ish. They were special needs, a lot of Down syndromes, but there were other, special needs as well. And, we'd take them bowling, we would take them on picnics, we'd have parties for them, and things like that. And so we had built up this relationship with this group of group homes, and for some reason, the relationship had developed to the point, and we had talked to the home parents and said, hey, we're taking this rugby trip. Would you guys like to come along with us? So we probably cobbled our 18 players together, the Great Falls Gophers, and headed that direction in POVs, private-owned vehicles. And the group home had a couple of special needs vans with big windows, and they could haul up and look out the windows and stuff, and they followed us on this journey. So we invited this group along, and we were all heading in that direction.
And so the idea is with all these cars that were leaving from various spots, because the Maggots at that point had kind of, most were out of school, some of us weren't, but they were scattered across the landscape of Montana. Most were still around Missoula, and everybody was headed to this event, and we had just decided on the logo, which was the Maggot Rosetta, which is a whole other story.
Right.
How that got.
We'll get to that.
And we got these long sleeve, heavy duty cotton black jerseys,
Rubber buttons.
with rubber buttons to play in the heat in September in the plains of Calgary, and so Pigpen picked him up at wherever they got mailed to. He picked him up, and he was going to ride up with Bohunk in his car, which we
John Malika,
which we affectionately, his car was named 5 Bodies in a Cloud of Rust, because we were sure as we were on one of these road trips that we would wind up getting a wreck, and that all they say is 5 bodies in a cloud of rust. And because you could look through that car, you could look through the floorboard of the car and see the highway go by, and as we drank our beers, we just drop them through and they would disappear on the highway. And you had
no open containers.
It was legal. It was illegal to litter, but you couldn't drink. You could drink and drive, and we did. But his front seat was held up by 2x4s, so he didn't fall through the floorboard. And he and Pigpen were bringing our new set of jerseys up, and about halfway between Lethbridge and Missoula, the 5 Bodies and Cloud of Rust broke down, and so they had this discussion on what to do. So the decision was Pigpen was going to hitchhike ahead with a bag full of jerseys.
The jerseys got to get
And Bohunk was going to figure out what to do with the car, so he hitchhiked back to Great Falls, and that's another story. But Pigpen was along the highway hitchhiking, and I'll hand it over back to you.
The good-hearted folks that we had invited along in the special needs vans saw somebody in need and pulled over to the side. But you got to back up. Mr. Penn, was originally Pigpen, and he earned the moniker. I mean, you go back and remember when we first knew the guy. I mean, his house was disheveled, his features and hair was disheveled, his personality was disheveled. I mean, Marcia tells a story about the first time she ever met Mr. Penn. He says, "Oh, I need my kit." He goes to the trunk, opens it up, and there's just shit everywhere. And you go, "Oh, there's a boot," and this stench coming off and everything else.
Well, Dewey tells a story when they were dough slingers at where he got the name. They were dough slingers at Shakey's Pizza. That Pigpen's dough was always gray. So he named him Pigpen.
That's where it came from.
And I used to say you could tell how long he was wearing his shirts, his T-shirts in particular. Like you do dendrochronology, where you can count tree rings.
Right.
You count pit rings. Oh God, he wore that a long time.
So he had this certain disheveled look about him. Anyway, he got picked up. I'm not sure where we were along in the story, but he got picked up by these vans and with the jerseys, and they were good-hearted folks, and he's sitting by the window watching the western Montana landscape go by as various new Maggots and Gopher cars went by, and as they were looking out the window, we were looking in the window. And
so Janice and I drive by, and I look in this van, and it says something like Great Falls Opportunity School. And I look up, and in the back, in the window, as this guy looks just like Pigpen, and Janice says, "That's Pigpen." I said, "No, it's not. Look at the bus."
Yeah. Why would he be on that bus?
And then Byron drives by, and they stop to read a historic roadside marker, and everybody's out, and Byron says, I looked up, and I said to my wife, Vicki, "Hey, there's Pigpen." And she said, "No, look at that van. It can't be Pigpen. It's a bunch of challenged people."
Yeah. There must be just one that looks like him.
It can't be that guy. Right? So,
but obviously in those days, there were no calls, there were no things. You just arrived and were now waiting for the jerseys.
Yeah,
I assume he got there last.
Right. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have, anyway, just you knew if you set this the time and place, that everybody was going to go through all the things you had to do to get there.
Right.
And like I say now, with GPS and cell phones, back when I was coaching the university club, I could not get them all together at the same time for kickoff. And we could do it in all these cars, leaving different times from different areas in Montana, and get there in time to have a side. So we're waiting, though. This time, Bohunk shows up, and we said, "Where are the jerseys?" "Well, Pigpen's got them." "Well, where's Pigpen?" "Well, he went through this whole story," and we're standing around waiting to kick off, and here's the team we're going to play, the U-23s or the Rams, it doesn't matter. They're chopping at the bit, and we didn't have our Maggot jerseys, we wanted to play in these jerseys, and it was like, we don't know where Pigpen is, and all of a sudden this bus pulls up, and all these eccentric people pile out, and then at the end of that pile of people comes Pigpen with a bag of jersey and a big grin, and I said, there's our team now! There's the jerseys! And he waddles out on the field and dumped the jerseys out, and we put them on, and we played that game.
That's awesome.
It predates, I'm going to digress here, but it predates cell phones. But Jimmy Beck ended up with a telephone receiver from a trip we took down to Caldwell, Idaho one time. And he had, I think it was an Oldsmobile convertible. I don't know what it was, but anyway, Oldsmobile convertible. And he had this telephone. It was just the receiver and the cord. And he somehow fastened it in his car. And we'd be someplace socially, the top would be down, whether it's practice or something. And he recorded this tape with about a 15, 20-minute delay on it. And the only thing that was on the tape was the phone ringing. So we'd be sitting out there doing whatever, and all of a sudden his phone would start ringing. Hey, oh, excuse me, man, I need to run over and pick up his phone.
He had his time.
The first mobile. Car phones.
Actually, I'd like the history better if it was the Rams myself.
Let's go on to some things that we think we do know. Tell me the team. Who were those guys that played? What were the first 15 guys that started for the Maggots as the Maggots?
That's a good point, Brownie. I'm trying to find a picture. It was called the Maggots and the Marigolds. And there is a picture that I had, and the Lethbridge field is really well maintained. It's one pitch, but there was a patch of marigolds in front, and we got behind that patch and we took this picture. And I had one, but I gave it, when the independent newspaper was around, I gave it to Chad Dundas, who wanted to do an article on the Maggots before our Maggot Fest, and he was going to post that picture, and then Independent folded, that paper disappeared, and I never could track down that picture. So I've been sending emails out saying, because I know other guys have that picture. And so who was on that? It was probably Haler.
If I had to guess, Haler probably captained the side. I think.
Yeah, he could have, yeah. And
so we know you were there, I was there.
Farmer was there.
I know Pigpen was there.
Pigpen, Bohunk.
Bohunk.
Beck wasn't there because he was a smoke jumper.
Swee was already in the military, so he wasn't there.
Probably Nick.
I would think Nick, yeah.
And certainly Dewey. And Dilly. It was a pretty good sized pitcher. Some guys aren't, they were like, I know the two guys on that, Dave, somebody only played that weekend. But, I'd have to look at the picture to figure out. It seems like we had about 25. Probably Spinion. I think Spinion was there.
Spinion was there? I mean, that's a great nickname. I mean, where does Spinion come from?
Yeah.
It's very racially laced.
We thought he was half Spick and half Indian. It turns out he's a very dark Frenchman.
We didn't know he was just Spicker and Indian, so we called him Spinion. It wasn't even close.
Different time.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So you won that game.
The first, I would say the first match. Well, I can't say that. I know vividly in my mind the first try that was scored. So I would say we probably won the first game.
Who was that?
He scored it.
Oh, you scored it.
That's for a different time. You want to hear that?
Yeah, I want to hear it. Yeah.
This is one of my. I've got 3 or 4 try. I was never a prolific try scorer. I mean, I can remember picking myself off the ground 35 meters out with 5 guys laying on top of me, and watching somebody score in the corner and just with a big grin on my face saying, you know what? I had a part in that. So
Yeah, you just ran without the ball. They tackled you. Over there.
Jimmy Beck was a prolific
Seaguller.
He was the sleaziest slide, just off the side. He sleazed so many tries, I never believed.
From like the 2 meter line, like
just wait.
Shit.
Anyway, vividly in my mind, I've got several favorite tries, but being the first Maggot try ever, I mean, it's near and dear to my heart. And Pigpen was involved, so you got to get his version of it. But this is the way I would remember it: is the pitch in Lethbridge that we played on that weekend, the inaugural weekend for the Maggots, ran north and south, and we were on the east sideline with a line-out throw-in, about 35 meters out. And me and Pigpen over the years had figured out this thing where, I was a good jumper. That was before lifting, and
Right.
I would good hands, good ups, tall to start with, and so I was the number one jumper. And whether it was jumping number 2 or number 4, I was kind of the go-to guy. But we had this thing with Pigpen where he would look at me and give me a wink when he saw, we saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
And that meant I would take the ball off the top, he would step back to make sure he's on side, I would pitch back to him, and he would go short side. Well, we're sitting up there 35 meters out, plus or minus, and he gives me this wink, and I'm going, okay, this is cool. Perfect throw in, I'm at the top, he steps back, I pitch it down to him, and he takes off on the short side of the line out. He's past would have been the other hooker in the scrum half, and he's
Before they even notice.
Yeah, before they even notice. And the next defensive man would have been the winger
Wing on
coming
that
up on him,
side,
and so he's already made 10, 15, 12 meters so before he gets any opposition, and never thought about Pigpen as a kicker, but I'm saying, okay, I'm outside, I'm following him, because I just love going in pursuit. So anyway, he comes up on the first opposition, 5 meters out from that opposition, puts an up and under, and I just blaze past, catch it on the full from about 2 meters out, dive across and touch it. That was the first my recollection, first Maggot try ever.
Yeah.
That's how you remember?
That was spectacular, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
I loved up and unders, and that's, man, how many years later, I still dream about stuff like that. Man, that's so cool.
That was the kickoff, Bill, when the old kickoff, when you kick from the tee or the...
Yeah, those
Bill was the guy down that
Yeah.
would light somebody up.
Yeah.
Actually, that's true. I would do that, but I much preferred competing for the ball.
Right.
I'd much rather get the ball and knock the guy on his
Now, was that a 3-point try?
No, that was a 4-point.
They had gone to 4 already.
71 was the...
Okay, when they changed it over. Okay. So the first 4-pointer comes from there. Now, was there anything else about that game that kind of sticks out in your memory, or?
I think we won.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did, yeah. So if that was the game we played the under-23s, the forwards just manhandled them, and we beat them pretty handily. The following Sunday, we played a pretty good team, because Haler was on that game. It was Nanaimo, and they were from
They're a
Vancouver.
BC team, right?
Yeah. And they were good. It would have been, they didn't have a championship, but it would have been the championship game. And that's when I tackled the guy by the hair, and you saved my ass.
God, I thought that was a Calgary Sevens.
No, that was out there.
Now, did you guys kind of recognize at the time the significance of, hey, this is our first match? Because then it was the first time you had the jerseys. And was there any kind of recognition of that? Or
I don't think we had any idea of that. We all were passionate about rugby, and we were all young, and that's all we did. If we could, we'd drag our girlfriends and wives along as they would stay with us, but we would go to play rugby.
Right.
That was priority. And I don't think we had a vision that the club was going to survive, because it didn't matter as long as we had to play.
So you're playing that day.
We were just, our charter says our whole mission in life is to play rugby and have fun. So we weren't looking at anything beyond that. And we were all so wrapped in rugby, just loving the process.
Yeah.
The road trips, the games, the matches. the parties afterwards and the stories and lies after that. I mean, we were just so wrapped in that, and that's one of the reasons we didn't record the history. We had no idea where we were going with this. And in my particular case, as far as the significance goes, I was a little bit of hot water because I was playing for two teams, and my team was pissed at me because who you playing for? You playing for the Gophers and the Maggots? I said, hey, I can play for both. Please.
Yeah, I remember those days of playing more than with just your team.
Because when Bill played for the Gophers, he would wreak havoc on the Maggots. We knew he was a force. He would, and then he'd play for us, and he would do. I mean, you love the game. You play hard.
At that time, who were the Montana teams? I've heard the Gophers and Maggots, but who else was playing actively in Montana at that time?
Bozeman, Billings, Helena.
Already by then there were that many?
Yeah, when the Maggots actually joined the rest of the teams later. People think the Maggots were early on. The university was around from '68 up until when the union formed was '77, but the Maggots came on board in '76. When Maggots came on board, Bozeman was already a team. Billings Bowls was already a team.
Okay.
Helena had a team.
Were they the Blues then, or were they?
They were the Blues.
The Pigs.
The Blue Pigs, or something like that. They had a weird name. And so when we had the first state championship, there were 6 teams.
Okay.
Butte wasn't there yet. Butte Anaconda came later.
But Oberweiser, didn't he help form the Anaconda connection too, and the Billings Bulls, right?
And a team in Miles City for a while.
Oh, okay.
And the Cool Blues. The other team in Missoula that existed for a while.
Does anybody know who was first? What the first team in Montana was? Just
Montana Rugby Club.
Yeah.
Because that predates everybody else.
1968. Yeah.
Okay, so we know that one.
We know that one. Yeah.
But you had to be playing mostly Canadian teams, right?
That's all Canadian,
Right.
and we went to either Seattle or Wazoo. Washington State had a team.
Okay.
But eventually it was all West Coast. It was Oregon, Washington, California.
Yeah.
But I mean, the first connections was Canada.
Yeah.
Right.
The vaunted Saints.
That
was predated me. You guys hated the Saints.
Who were they?
Calgary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Calgary Saints, the Irish, the Saints. The only team that really liked us were the Rams, because the Rams weren't that good. They identified with us.
Until I played for them.
But we were. That's probably why the Maggots name came around. We would, as university kids, we'd go out there and we'd get the shit knocked out of us, and we'd come back, and we would figure it out, and we'd go back up, and we'd get a little.
We might lose the match, but we won the party.
We would win the party.
Right.
So I don't know if you remember this. Remember we got an email prior to Fest this year from somebody from the Calgary Rams. And I don't think it was Animal. I don't remember who it was for sure, but he was talking about hey, it's time, let's have a reunion between the Rams. The Rams and the Maggots, which argues, that was our first match, argues for that. But they were certainly the first match we played on the inaugural pitch on our old pitch
Down here.
Yeah, exactly. On the old, before the Fort Missoula Regional Park.
Oh, okay.
The original pitch.
Where was that?
Basically Fort Missoula. It's basically where the softball complex is now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get right to the nitty-gritty of this thing. I've heard all the stories from different people. I love the apocryphal nature of whether things are true or not. Doesn't really matter. How do you believe, Co, that the Maggots got their name? I know you were there. I know there's a lot of people who were there at different times, and I've heard different stories, but I know you were there, so what's your version?
So I'm gonna jump to the most recent, which is this year Maggot Fest, and then we can back up to some of the history. As I recall, Skip, we got an email prior to Fest this year that somebody affiliated with the Rams, and I don't remember who it was for sure, that said, hey, this is the 40th, 50th, 55th anniversary that we've been together with the pitch inauguration and all that stuff. And I still in contact with some of those original Calgary Rams, and he named off a few. And in that email, he claimed that Fred Kazikoff was
Wow.
still around. He was in, just north of Eureka someplace, as I recall, somewhere up in there. And he was still around, still kicking. And the claim in this email was that he was the one that dubbed us the Maggots from Montana.
Oh, okay.
Don't know if that's true, but that's my recollection of what the email stated.
That could be true. I'll give you two versions. I know my first game when we were University of Montana Rugby Club, we had no jerseys, and Henry Bird, the guy that organized us, the Irish guy that was a great talker but never showed up for games and helped us, he coached us for a little bit. He got us jerseys from a local, or not jerseys, t-shirts from a local beer distributor, and on the front it said Lucky Lager Breakfast of Champions, like a Wheaties box.
Right.
And they were t-shirts, and he said, these are your jerseys, and we went out there and played, although he didn't show up for the first game in Calgary when I was up there. We played the Stags and absolutely got crushed because there were probably 4 guys that ever played rugby before, and I remember those jerseys got ripped off, but we wore those everywhere we went. They're white with red writing on them, and they said, you guys look like a bunch of maggots. So Fred could have, sort of coined that, the Maggots from.
And who's this guy, Fred?
He was a leader of the Calgary Rams, one of the
Okay.
top officials. That was a pretty good-sized organization. The Rams, they probably had maybe 3 or 4 different sides.
Okay.
They had a premier side, and east side, C side, and a social side. So they, in Calgary, it's way different than here.
Right.
And we need 18 guys to go to Seattle. They've got the continuity.
Right.
But Kazakov was
He was a leader, yeah.
He was a leader, a leader. There were several.
Yeah, and they had it was a solid, established club for probably since the 50s and
Probably.
or 40s in Calgary. The other theory is that we used to go out drinking when we were in high school, and our good friend Jimmy Beck would always say, we're going to go out and get maggot drunk. And so I don't know, probably between that, those statements, and the fact that we wore these white t-shirts that always got ripped off and it wouldn't go away, and we played the Rams all the time. I think all those stories are sort of combined in this, what are we going to call ourselves? And
Was there like a meeting somewhere where you said, this is, because you had to put it in your charter, right? When you said, well, this is going to be our team, there had to be a decision at some point that, yeah, we are the Maggots. Do you remember that?
Absolutely. I remember that. And that's where I was going to go here
Gotcha.
and then back up a little bit. And this is my recollection. Your recollection is Jimmy kind of was the, hey, we're the Maggots sort of thing. My recollection is that Jimmy didn't want us to be called the Maggots. There was some controversy there. He actually he wanted us to be the Missoula Athletic Club, Missoula Athletic Club,
Okay.
and not just include rugby, but do all kinds of other sports. He wanted to be that inclusive.
Bigger vision.
And that's my recollection of his stance at the time.
but I'm not saying Jimmy said, that was Jimmy's thing when we were in high school. I
understand.
Yeah.
But that's my recollection of his, at the meeting that you're talking about, where we're saying, okay, what are we going to call ourselves?
Yeah.
And Jimmy says, and so that's my recollection of Jimmy's position. It's clear to me what my position was. I never liked the name Maggots. I just thought it was too maggoty. I didn't like it. I was kind of a serious rugby player. I liked the chicanery and the frivolity, but I didn't like the debauchery. And it was just it was a step too far. I was in the Air Force, and I just wasn't into that. It was, okay, whatever. It's not my choice. You guys do whatever the hell you want to do. And so I wasn't supportive of it at the time.
Right.
And even to this day, you say maggots, that word, you think about it. For Christ's sakes, you think about it. So in certain social circles, I'll say, yeah, I'm affiliated with a local rugby club.
Yeah.
And leave the whole maggot part out of it. However, I've got to recognize and be incredibly proud of where we started and where we are now. The Maggots are world renowned. I mean, there's bumper stickers on the backs of Hummees and tanks in the desert in the Southeast Asia or wherever in the heck, and the Maggot Fest is world renowned.
Yeah.
So I'm maybe in church I may not say, "Hey, I'm a maggot," but on the other hand, I've come to appreciate that, and I will admit that sometimes I'll just call us the rugby club.
Yeah, the Missoula team.
Well, when we were in New Zealand, one of the clubs that hosted us said, we should think of maggots as these things that used to live in the backs of our sheep, because if a sheep gets maggots,
Right.
it's pretty bad. Now we just know the maggots are those other things that come out and bother our sheep.
I wasn't on the trip. Maybe Skip, you might have been there, but I think they took a road trip probably to England. I'm thinking to England for one of the World Cups, and actually took a tour of a maggot
Right
farm
there.
or something.
That back there is the article.
I still have a hat from that day.
Oh, you were on that trip?
I was on that trip, and I have a hat. And there was the thing about that trip that was really was JPR. Came and spoke to us.
The great fullback.
Yeah. And JPR Williams came out to speak to us because he was a doctor
at the maggot farm?
at that hospital. He worked it was in Bridgend. And he worked at that hospital. And a lot of guys didn't know who he was, but it was like, that's J.P.R. Williams, one of the greatest rugby players of all time.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
Legendary
Yeah, absolutely. But so was there a time period between when you weren't the university team and you knew you were going to be splitting off, kind of, that you played some games without being the Maggots or without your own jerseys? Or was it a pretty clear delineation?
It was pretty clear.
Okay.
That's what I recall, yeah.
We just said, and we crossed back and forth.
Right.
Because I was still in university.
Right.
In fact, the first state championship, I played for the Maggots every game, and I played for the university every game, and I was coaching university.
Okay.
And when it came time for the state championship game, the first ever, I had to make a decision, and I played.
Because it was the Maggots versus the university.
Right, so I played with the university, and we lost 6-3.
Oh.
Yeah, Hollywood kicked one field goal or one conversion, and Dewey kicked the other two for the Maggots.
Well,
Wow.
I think one of the guys must have been Kirk Mace, kicked from the wrong spot.
Well, according to we were the tie, except Nick was a maggot, the injured maggot that couldn't play, so he
was the ref. Okay.
It was fine. I mean, it was controversial, but and again, in context of things, it was a hard loss, but we got together, had a great party, and now it's history.
So I think of the Maggots. You say the Rosetta was the first on the jersey, right? When did the sort of Andy Maggot character make its appearance? Was that Fests later on, or was that an early thing?
His idea was Kirk Johnson was our early artist.
So we had a guy that played a little bit with us who was a graphic artist.
Okay.
And we would talk to him, and he did the Rosetta, and he did the Andy Maggot.
But there was Andy Cap.
Right, there was the old comic strips. He played rugby. Yeah.
And he stole that. He stole Andy. We stole that from Andy Cap.
Right.
In fact, I was going to bring an article. I left it on the table, of course, because I was spacey. But Kirk Johnson's son lives across the street from Psycho.
Okay.
And is it Eric?
I think it's Eric.
And brought him some articles about the history.
Oh, wow.
Of he wrote down all the stuff he had done, and I was going to bring that for this discussion, but I spaced it out. But anyway, it was. He did a lot of the art for us, and we talked. I think he played 1 or 2 seasons. Do you remember?
Oh, I remember Kirk. Yeah, I still know Kirk, yeah.
1 or 2 seasons with us.
Still see him around.
And a great graphic artist, and he would just draw things up for us and give it to us. And we didn't have to buy it. He just did it because he's part of the club.
Yeah.
And they're iconic. The one, I don't think it's that one. The third Maggot Fest, he did these little characters that are... they're spelling Maggot Fest, and they're rugby players. And he drew that. He did several. Well, he did. There he is, right there, Andy Maggot.
Oh yeah.
He did this. This is the guy right here.
Okay.
And
I see him. Yeah.
He drew him as a maggot.
Wow.
And actually, this is the article that says I think we played the Rams first anyway.
Yeah.
Or
So has there, I know that you say,
Go
ahead.
Andy Maggot. One of my favorite handicap cartoons was a rugby cartoon. I think I was in Great Falls when I saw it at the time. Anyway, this guy's doing a breakaway. The whole handicap, just cartoonish. He's making a breakaway down the side of the pitch, and, he's right down the sideline. There's this great big fence on the side, and pretty soon the second one is Andy Cap just picking this up and dumping him, and the fence is just a mess, and the guy's just hanging over the fence is broken, how the birds and the stars go over the guy's head, and Andy Cap's running back the other way full speed and says, the art of tackling is knowing how far to go and going just a little bit further.
yeah.
So I know you weren't a fan of the name right off the bat, but it is something unique. What's kind of your memory of how people reacted to it at different times now it's a little bit different because, it's a 50-year-old tradition kind of thing, but in those early years, was there some real negative, thoughts about that?
The community might have had some resistance, but after years of Maggot Fest, seeing the success of the Maggot Fest, seeing the commerce that we brought to town, and the lack of volatility and violence that they anticipated that never materialized, I think it grew in acceptance, and they recognize now that the commerce and the tourist dollars that we bring to town. I don't remember negative reactions.
There was Ed Haggerty, Rugby News.
Oh,
read.
I wrote for Ed for many years. I knew him. Yeah.
Send us a letter saying you have to change your name. You're an embarrassment to rugby. I have that. I was going to hang it on the wall.
Yeah.
And we had to talk about it. Like, look. Yeah. And because it made Dead Goat out of Park City, their name was Dead Goat. Said, you guys are embarrassing. He was trying to get everybody to do mainstream. And we said, no, fuck you. Yeah. We are an independent rugby union. We're proud of who we are. And we're not going to get knuckled down by you guys. And for a while, through that effort, we were banned from playing other teams because we would not join any organization. We were unaffiliated, and it was a $250 fine to come to the Maggot Fest. And teams are paying that and still coming because Ed Haggerty had started this thing we're going to clean up rugby, and there are those thugs out there. He didn't know who we were. Right. He just didn't like the name. Right. He didn't like this idea of Maggot Fest, these social tournaments, and we stood our ground. We lost in some degree that we had to get sucked in because of insurance purposes to being affiliated, but we were proudly the last independents, and we stuck with that name. We're going to keep this name. This is who we are. This is our identity, and we hung on to it. Now, like Bill says, it's the Maggots. Yeah, hell yeah. This team we want to come to that Maggot Fest.
There's a lot of teams called the Harlequins and the Rams and all these other names. There's, as far as I know, just the Maggots, and then I guess there's a team in New Zealand now that's also the Maggots.
Oh, really?
Someone told me.
Copycats.
Somewhere, I think it was Haji that showed us that they had actually adopted a name.
Called the Maggots. Wow.
The Maggots.
I do remember one other negative reaction, or probably the only negative reaction I remember. I didn't know Haggerty did that, and I knew Haggerty, by the way. But it must have been 8-10 years ago. We have to bring in trainers for the coaching and referees back in the old days with USA Rugby to be sipped and all that stuff. And we had one representative come up here, and I don't know if it was a referee coaching, clinic.
One of those things.
One of those things. And part of his presentation was a lecture to us about making sure we maintain the proper image and how we give the image of this debauchery and drinking and everything else. And I think it's a complete wrong characterization. I mean, we're mischievous, but we're not criminal by any stretch. But his lecture to us is we need to put a stop to this. And we just said, okay, whatever. Give me my cert.
There has been that thought, I think, since probably the beginning of rugby in this country, and I wholeheartedly disagree with it. And it's now seeped into the college ranks, I believe, where they have decided that that college rugby should be dry and not fun, and we should do all these things. And to me, it's not acceptable to decide for other people how they're going to have their rugby experience. And it sounds like you guys basically said, we're doing it our way.
Yeah, you know, I having coached university for 26 years, I always said, so do you want adults to babysit you, or you guys want to develop a program where you get to babysit yourself? All I do is tell you how to play rugby and give you some advice, and you can be as good or bad as you want.
Right.
But you're adults. But once you surrender your authority to the coaches under the Grizz label,
right,
then you are owned. And if that's what you want to do, I'm not coaching.
Right.
That's one of my memories and beauties of my earliest days in rugby, were those spring trips that we took on that old that old bus. I mean, we had 20 to 25, 23, 24, 25 of us, probably 21 to 24 years old.
18
with no adult supervision. We were in charge of ourselves. We didn't do anything criminal. We just had a blast. And that independence and that fun and that glee will never be duplicated. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. We policed ourselves. I mean, there were times when somebody would cross the line and they would be castigated for it. I mean, never again. You won't do that again if you want to be around us.
Well, it says right in the bus, no stealing.
But that's what comes to mind. Somebody somewhere stole a case of beer at a convenience store, and we said no.
Right, we're not doing this.
There were some hard conversations, and do you stay on the bus or do you clean it, go back in and pay for it?
Right.
And you go back in and pay for it, you get to stay on the bus. But that's, so now if you wear, if you grizz up, like the university wants to do, then they can't, they're going to be owned by the coaches. Somebody's going to babysit them, and they won't get to make all those decisions. Many were not great decisions, but none were criminal.
Right.
We made some pretty silly. Remember the walnuts?
Silly.
Remember the walnuts we ate?
Antique Chinese walnuts. We're in Portland, Oregon, on one of these road trips, and we're in this great big house party, and it's just this old Victorian house, multi-stories, and we're drinking beer. The bus is parked out front, and Skip and all of us guys are sitting down there, and we're swilling beer, and we're not doing anything bad. We're just sitting on the couch, and there's this bowl of walnuts. They're painted walnuts, and we're thinking, what the heck? We start cracking these things and eating them. They're a little bit stale. What are we thinking? And the lady walks over, not the lady, it was a young lady.
The young lady.
And he said, oh my God, those are 27, those are 1,200-year-old painted walnuts. Chinese or what? It's just got nothing left but crumbs, but we just looked at her and burped. I think.
Yeah, I wonder how many of you guys are there left? And by you guys, I mean people that were there at the beginning. And who are they? Like, who do we need to talk to?
Oh, pretty good handful, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, the remarkable thing about the history of the Maggots is, I think, it was the strength of what made this club last is we all stayed together. We hung out, we created this team with no idea where we're going to go, and we stayed together. There's probably, out of the original, I'm saying...
We just hosted 15 at Rock Creek.
Yeah, right, good point. As I said, out of the original 25, only 2 have, bit the dust.
Right. A couple we can't get a hold of, but... Yeah.
Most of us stayed together and all have this passion about rugby. We had this great up at Bill's Lodge up at Rock Creek. He hosted us with this last Maggot Fest, and how many did we have? 15.
We're 15, yeah.
15 of the originals.
Wow.
And that wasn't all of them. I mean, Dilly didn't make it up there.
And Farmer. Hegman and Farmer. Yeah. So that'd have been 18. Probably
a full side. We got a traveling side.
So who are those guys? Let's name them. I'm just curious because.
So at your lodge there was you, me, Beck, Giorgio, Pigpen, Dewey, Maurice, Mr. Natural. Help me.
Natural didn't show up.
Mr. Natural wasn't there.
He was here though, wasn't he?
Yeah. Corcoran.
Yeah, Cochran,
Hoffman, Rex.
Farmer, Rex. He was the coach.
Anyway, that's
but that's
and the ones that weren't there, were still the ones we mentioned. With
They showed up
didn't
later.
make it. Dilly didn't make it up there. God, who's the last one? We couldn't get a hold of Kaplan, but I mean, they're still. Well, Sweetheart made it up there, so there's another.
Oh, Sweetie. Yeah, he's the original.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been in the military. I've worked for the same company for 32 years. The camaraderie in rugby is unsurpassed. I mean, it rivals military, and in my career, probably surpassed it because I never fought in combat.
Right.
But so the combat equivalent was the love and the sacrifice and the camaraderie and the hard work and the sweat and the blood and the travel time that you have with when you're 23, 24, 25 years old with your mates without adult supervision. Unfriggin' believable.
yeah.
Well, and I'm just looking at the first annual Maggot Fest program. I mean, we were in our 20s and we did this. We kicked this thing off.
Yeah.
And
We organized it. Yeah, I mean, look where it is to this day.
look at this thing. It's so cheesy, but we did it. And when we did the first big one in '79, we had 42 teams show up.
Wow.
Part of that history was, okay, we're isolated. We're Missoula, Montana. Where do we go to play good rugby? You want to play good rugby. So you could travel here, you can travel there. And somebody had the brilliant idea, which has continued to this day, 40-some years later. They said, let's not travel. Let's just bring the rugby to us. And that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah,
right?
and we'll throw the best party ever.
And let's bring the teams to us.
I was the first fest chairman, and we lost $1,800 because we.
A good investment, by the way.
Right.
We made up for it in volume.
It was a very contentious maggot meeting after that. Is that I said, hey, Hoffman was the treasurer. You got to buy another keg. We're running out of beer, and he was bringing beers. I said, we got to get more beer. He says, we're out of money. I said, get more beer. And we had spent everything we had for the first fest.
Right.
We had drained our bank account, and then we had this long, hard talk. How we can't do this. And then we got smarter. It's like, okay, everybody's gonna have fun. They're gonna drink a lot of beer, but we got to figure out how to market better.
Right.
We got to figure out. And then and it wasn't me. It was other guys that came with
Selling
different-
cups and
different skills,
Yeah, yeah.
saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we will make sure they show up. Sort of like when you go to Vegas, you have a lot of fun, but you lose a lot of money. When you leave, you think, well, I lost a lot of money, but I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that was sort of how we said it's not wrong to take money from fellow rugby players as long as they're having fun.
right.
We can live with that. But
We've rationalized ripping off our fellow rugby players.
Who were the big rivals right at the beginning?
Back up here,
Yeah.
let's talk about losing money, $1,500 in that first fest. Okay.
Right.
Skip has this recollection, which is great. We got to drive this thing forward. So Skip and the others drove this whole thing forward. There were years, and as far as I know, the highest peak net profit we ever got from a Maggot Fest was in the range of $15,000. I mean, it was normal to $8,000 to $10,000 of net
Yeah, that's
profit,
good years, yeah.
and back down to 5 and 4. So we're still hosting, and a lot of work goes into making $5,000. Should we be selling Girl Scout cookies instead of that? No, but over the course of 40 years. And all that hard work from a deficit to all those surpluses, we were able to garner $350,000 plus or minus in the Maggot investments. And you know what? Voila! The door opened up a 40-year dream.
And now we're sitting in it.
We're sitting in it right now. We've got an investment bought before the prices of real estate went like this. So I always argued that this is not spending money. This is an investment, and we've doubled our money on this place plus. And so this is where that Maggot Fest money went. All those years, all that hard work. It's a dream come true.
Absolutely. Do you remember how many teams there were that first year?
The first fest there were 6. It was Montana teams.
Oh, okay.
It was Yeah, I was just looking at this.
Yeah,
It was all Montana teams.
Okay.
We had a dream. We invited Lethbridge down. They didn't show. The second year we went to New Zealand and we came back and it was all Montana. It was in conjunction with the state championship, and the Maggots won the state championship again, and we had Pocatello show up and they beat us.
Okay.
Which was really sucked because we just
just won. Yeah.
And 2 drop kicks over the fullback. Our fullback's head. The guy caught it and ran in for a try to win the game, and the fullback was me. That's off camera.
Edit that.
And Larry Phillips was that guy's name, and I'm still looking for him. I'll tackle him someday. I'll dig him up. But
when did it start taking off? When did Maggot Fest start?
Well, so 79.
Okay.
Which I was fest chairman again, and we had this whole concept. Opelweiser said we got to go big. You know, this is a piddly ass thing. Let's go big. And so we had this idea that we would, again, this is before internet and cell phones. We will write every rugby club that we have access to, and that was Ed Haggerty's Rugby News.
All right. It was all listed in the back.
And we just wrote. Yeah. And Morty and Denicky were in charge of fixtures, and because most of us worked, we worked for the governor's ski team. That means we worked in the summers, and as long as we could until we got laid off, then we had unemployment.
Right.
And then we ski. So it was work for the governor's ski team, and we'd sit at the turf bar and
before it burned down.
And before they burned us out, and we would drink and talk.
Oh, man!
And so we had this thing, and Oberweiser was the best promoter ever. He said, "Let's go big."
Yeah.
And so we had sent out all these invitations, and Morty had everything in a paper bag. You know, he and Denicky were keeping track of the invites and the responses. But again, it was before the internet.
Right.
And so Morty, we got really drunk one night at the turf, and he lost his bag. So we had no idea who was going to show up. So Friday, teams started showing up, and it was like, holy shit. There's 42 teams.
Thank God I was still in Great Falls in the Air Force.
and Jimmy back says, do we have referees? And I said, oh my God, we don't. So I said, Jimmy, go get so he went down to the library, because this is again before you had law books.
Right.
And he came back with pages of the laws, and I said, we're all going to be referees. We went and got some whistles at not Circle K, the other one, the old
7-Eleven.
No, it's where Cabela's is now. What was that store?
Don't know.
Anyways, like Circle K or like Walmart.
Oh yeah.
And he got a bunch of whistles, and we set up
Kmart,
and we read law books, and then we all became referees. When we weren't playing, we were refereeing. We had 42 teams stuck in this little tiny place in the Palace Bar, and Big Barb, the notorious love monster from the better side,